Dates and Mates with your host, Damona Hoffman.
Hello, lovers. Welcome to Dates and Mates with Damona Hoffman, where we demystify modern love. We have an exciting show lined up for you today. And you guys, it's not just any show. No, people, it is our 200th episode. Oh my gosh. Thank you. Thanks
the
for the
live
applause.
studio audience is loving it.
Oh, thank you. No, but really, so much has happened in the 200 Dates and Mates shows. But one thing's remained the same. We're still having fun, and we're still making an impact on people's love lives every week. So whether you're new to the show or you've been listening all along, thank you. I'd love for you to leave a review on iTunes and tell me which show has been your favorite of these 200 and anything else you'd like to share about Dates and Mates. Thank you for listening. We have headlines, though. We have headlines to tell you about. I like to keep you in the know. We'll be talking today about what your drink order says about you.
There we go.
On a date. And a strange dating rule that dates back over a century. This one really surprised me. I can't wait to tell you about it. And plus, we have to talk about it. Everyone's talking about it. What can we learn from the recent Aziz Ansari scandal? We'll talk about that, plus some thought-provoking questions in technically dating, like signs you've been invited to a booty call, and how to maintain a long-distance relationship. And by the way, if you are still struggling to find love this year, it's not too late to get into my new women's group program, which starts Monday. So don't wait. Fill out an application at datebynumbers.com. And just the icing on the cake, what I'm super excited about today, I have a guest joining me in studio, Diane Valentine, who you've seen on the Bravo TV series To Rome for Love. She's going to be in studio with me in just a minute. But first, producer Thomas, happy anniversary.
Thank you so much. It's been a blast of a year, and I've very much enjoyed my time here.
I'm so glad that you're here with us, and I'm so glad you're going to be joining me today in the dish.
Dee's Dating Dish.
I didn't know that people were judging on such an intricate level that what you order on a date could be the difference between getting a second date and getting left with your head on the bar.
People are very opinionated.
People are very opinionated.
Some hot takes.
Yeah, it turns out, and this is interesting, it came from a British dating app, TrueView, who conducted a survey of users. I've talked about this a couple years ago in the States, but I think it's interesting. It's a little different in the UK, and I actually thought that a pint would be a good thing.
I was very surprised by how against pints of beer and cider they were, because I assume that's what you do in the UK. You have a pint.
I guess that's just too ordinary.
Yeah.
But you're good to go if you order wine. Mm-hmm. They said white wine was generally considered
universally accepted.
Thank you, Producer Thomas, for the correction. Yeah. But red wine was really that was the move. Mm-hmm. 90% said yes on red or rosé. Personally, I will judge a rosé. Especially if a guy orders a rosé, he ain't getting a second date.
It's 2018, Damona. We can't make those assumptions anymore. But white wine, I think, is the safe.
Okay,
safest.
well, honestly, I would judge a little bit, even if a guy ordered a white wine. But don't order a cider. Don't order a beer. And you know what you definitely shouldn't order? Don't order a shot.
Never.
That was universally considered unattractive and the road to not getting the next date.
Yeah.
And also, I mean, this goes without saying, but don't get drunk on the date.
Yeah, they were like, well, I was surprised that they set the limit so high. They're like, don't order more than 5 drinks. I was like, a first date, 5 drinks is a lot. I feel like maybe 3 is the max for a first date.
This is the UK.
Yeah, that's true. I guess it's a little different.
Yeah, they can really put it away there. They said 5 drinks is too many, but then they also said ordering a non-alcoholic drink was, quote, suspicious.
I actually do somewhat agree with that. If you're out on a first date to a bar and the other person is being a little stonewalling, ordering any alcohol, it's a little weird. I think it could throw you for a loop.
Suspicious, though?
I don't know. What are they planning? What are they scheming?
What if they have a problem? Or they just want to be clear?
Why did they want to meet at a bar? Go to get a coffee if you can't be around alcohol.
But what if they want to say, I'm cool with it. It's cool if you drink. I'm just maybe they're on a cleanse or something.
Yeah,
that's so
I
LA.
guess you never know. No cleanses in the UK as far as I know.
No, they use the shots for that.
Yeah.
That's not the only rule, though, that you need to be up to speed on. There's a rule that I think everybody has heard this rule, but what surprised me about it was where it originated from. You've heard this rule that men should not date men can only date a woman as young as half their age plus 7. Like that's the bottom limit.
Mm-hmm.
But I was surprised to find out this actually was written down first in 1901. We didn't just make up these numbers. Right. I mean, there's a lot of dating experts making up a a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
This one,
no, there's hard facts.
was made up by a guy named Max O'Rell, which is not really his name; it's his pen name. Over 100 years ago, and that was one of the rules. And he was like the Hitch of his day. Mm-hmm. He was a speaker, and he wrote these books. And he said women are generally allowed to date men 5 to 15 years older, but don't go over that half the age plus 7. I don't know if this is something that we should really still be abiding by today, because some people take it to an extreme. Like you got people in their 70s that are like, okay, 35 plus 7, like
right.
I'm good.
We're good.
42,
we're good.
I'm good.
Yeah.
I just did math there really quickly.
Yeah,
I
that
don't
was
know if you saw
impressive
that.
live on air. That was good.
Live math.
Yeah.
You get so much on Dates and Mates.
I think I generally agree with, I think one of the experts they polled was just like, it's good to obviously just personally set a limit to how low you'll go. And I think, what's your take on that? Like, what's the youngest you can date?
I agreed with, I think it was Rachel Russo, who said it's about where you are in your stage of life. Like, let's say you're 50 and you're retired. Then it doesn't necessarily matter if you're dating a 70-year-old retired person, although you have to kind of play it forward, and then you're like, in 10 years, you might be, you might be the caretaker.
Back on the market.
But as far as the bottom age limit, it's the level of maturity. Like if you're 22, you're probably not established in your career. You probably don't have a good nest egg to be a good provider. So that's one of the reasons why most women wouldn't date someone who's younger.
Yeah.
and like you're also probably still playing games and life together.
It was interesting they pointed out how it's like a little bit less accepted for women to date younger men just because men like are slower to mature, whereas like it makes more sense for a woman to date an older man.
I will tell you a little story, Producer Thomas.
Okay,
I don't
tell
know if
me
you've
the
heard this
story.
one, but I had this idea in my head when I was single that I had to date a man a year to 10 years older. For whatever reason, that was what I decided was my age range. And I kept searching on this site that I was using. I hopped around different sites, but this one particular site, I kept searching and I just was not finding the right kind of guys. And then this email landed in my inbox. And the guy was perfect. He was everything I was looking for. And I'm like, why didn't this guy come up in my searches? Because we were the same age. And that man is now my husband.
Well, there you go.
And I almost missed him because I had this ridiculous idea about age, an age range on my profile. And so what my advice is to just open it up. And I was just having this conversation with a client yesterday. She was like, oh, I need to date, same thing, a guy a year to 9 years older. And I was like, she's 31. I said, could you just inch it down maybe to 28?
Yeah, why not?
28,
Yeah.
that guy could be established. And she's like, oh, you're killing me. I'm like, I'm not killing you.
no.
I'm giving you opportunities. And you just don't know. That guy might have everything that you're looking for and be really mature. I'd love to hear what you guys think. Why not? Leave it in the comments. Would you date someone more than 10 years younger? What's your bottom limit age range? What do you think about this old rule of half the age plus 7? Producer Thomas, we have to cap off the dish with the story that's
Sweeping the nation.
Sweeping the nation, and it's causing a lot of people to be to take sides here. Aziz Ansari, he was accused of, I guess, sort of not really criminal sexual misconduct. I would say more like a social, sexual, inappropriate,
moral, ethical,
right? Okay, so let me catch you guys up if you've been living under a rock. So this little known publication named Babe published a story about a woman who they're calling Grace. It's not really Grace, but it's Grace. And she went on a date with Aziz, and there was drinking. They went back to his place, and then she kept declining to have sex with him. And then he calmed down for a moment, and then he'd do something really gross and forward and showed that he either didn't understand the signals that she was giving or he just didn't care.
Yeah.
And it's really hard to tell from his response to it. He said that he was under the impression that everything was consensual, and he was kind of surprised the next day when she told him that he was a huge jerk.
But that is literally what everyone says when they're accused of these kinds of things.
Oh, some people.
Yeah.
Some people don't even have the ability to say that.
Yeah.
But okay. the hubbub is all about whether he actually did something wrong because he didn't force himself on her, and whether this Grace person is actually hindering the Me Too movement by accusing this person who's a celebrity who's giving her a lot of attention now of this sexual misconduct. My question, Producer Thomas, is what are the rules in dating today? Because by my rules, she was giving him the signals that she wanted to get down. She went to the bar, they had a lot of wine, and then he said, "You want to go back to my place?" And I will say, my rule for most of my clients, and my rule when I was dating most of the time, was no thank you. If I wanted to actually have a relationship with this person and not just, roll into bed with them. I don't. That's what I was taught as a young girl. I don't know what if something has shifted, or if she really wanted something out of this situation, and then she gets him into the chase me. Because I hear that from a lot of women too. Like, I want to be pursued and I want to be chased, and it's confusing to guys when they think you're playing hard to get and you're giving the signals because you're sticking around. She didn't leave. She could have left a lot of times.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, none of us were in the room, so we don't know, exactly how it planned out. But I think it is always important to, believe these women that are coming forward with these stories of harassment and assault. And it's clear from her reporting of it that she was made uncomfortable. And if he continued to pursue her and push her forward when she was giving off clear signals that she wasn't down, because she talks about how he would reach for her and she would take his hand away, then he is still at fault if he's pushing a woman into an uncomfortable situation. However, I will say that I think the larger conversation should be about the general culture of masculinity and toxic masculinity and all that, instead of a direct attack on Aziz himself. It's we need to look at the larger picture of how men are being cultivated and raised and stuff, where this situation comes about even in the first place.
And I also think that women need to be nurtured in a different way. To be clear, all the time we think they understand. He knew that I was uncomfortable, and maybe he didn't know that you were uncomfortable. Maybe there was another situation he had where a woman was pushing you away, but really that was part of the courtship and the chase. So the clearest thing she could have done is to say, instead of saying, when he asked, "When are you going to have sex with me?" Instead of saying next time, say, "You're coming on too strong. Or just say, "I gotta go." Say, "I'm not really into this right now. Thanks for dinner. Goodbye."
Yes. I mean, in an ideal situation, that would be on the table. But I've read a lot of takes, and maybe I would be interested in hearing your take. Do you sometimes feel that women can't be as direct to give explicit no because of a danger of a man reacting, violently or something like that?
I mean, every situation is different, and I can't really judge in this particular situation. And he is a celebrity, so maybe she just had a level of intimidation. But my point is to get across is to tell women that you are the one doing the choosing and you have the choice. And if you don't want to go through with it and you don't want to be treated in that way, you need to set a firm boundary. And it's on us to continue to set that firm boundary and let men know what we will and what we will not accept for them. That's it.
All right.
That's my advice. Those are some juicy headlines, Producer Thomas.
Yeah.
Ooh, but that's just the beginning. My guest for today, Diane Valentine, is the host and love expert on the brand new Bravo show, To Rome for Love. Before I bring her in, let me show you a sneak peek of the series.
Black women have a hard time finding love in America.
We are seen as very outspoken. We're ghetto.
We're rude.
And it's not true. We are queens. We are beautiful. And we should be going where we're celebrated.
Rome is one of the most magical places in the world.
This is the Colosseo.
Did you think Russell Crowe in here?
It has great food, amazing architecture, old world charm, and fine Italian men.
He's so handsome. I'm leaning over to the side, clutching my pearls.
I've been in the business of love for over 20 years, and my team and I have been taking women struggling with finding love in the States to Rome for years.
I want you to meet my friend Nikita. This is my girlfriend Gina.
I love you, baby!
You're gonna tip this boat over and wet my wings.
Where they can let their walls down and simply be themselves.
I could watch you say Italianine all day.
When I leave here, I'm not gonna be the same person I was when I first walked through that door.
None of us will.
This wasn't the life I planned for me.
I've never really talked about my story.
I'm not convinced that you're really vested.
She has been into a dude, and she's been hiding him from us.
I have to sit back and watch you get your fairy tale ended.
Why are you here?
I'm suffocating.
I thought my life was getting better, and that just helped me right now.
I came here with an open heart to love again.
And what do you like so far?
You? I think I may have finally found my Italian style.
It's about them figuring out who they are and what they want out of life.
But I want to go to a group hug.
My guest this week, Diane Valentine. She is an internationally acclaimed wedding and event planner and interior designer. She's an author of the book Going the Distance for Love. Here it is. She's also the love expert on the new Bravo TV series, To Rome for Love. Please give big smooches to Diane Valentine. Let me give you your smooches, girl. There's the smooches. Okay, so into Rome for Love. You take 5 black women to Italy to find love.
Yes.
What inspired the concept of the show?
I fell in love with Italy probably 25 years ago. I went there for the first time in my early 20s, and I just immediately fell in love with the country. I fell in love with the people, with the culture. I consider myself pretty well traveled, right? But there's not a lot of places where I go where I feel so comfortable, culturally comfortable. So there's something about Italian culture and African American culture. I think that there are a lot of similarities. And I just fell in love with it. And I've been going there for 20 plus years. And I got married there 8 years ago in Lake Como.
Oh, beautiful.
So when the opportunity to create something like this for Bravo came up, the question was, well, where should we shoot it? And my first thing was like, well, it has to be Italy, because when I go to Italy, I feel more attractive. I feel more desired. I get a lot more attention.
So let's talk about that for a minute, because a lot of these women, I think, experienced something different when they were in Italy than what happened to them at home.
Yes.
Is there something you think that is blocking black women from finding love here in the States that made you have to take them out of the country to find love?
That's a very complicated question. And what I will say is I know that black women are struggling to find love. Now, that doesn't mean all black women, but there's certainly a lot of black women that are single and don't want to be single. And if we could just look at the numbers, if you just examine the number of single black African-American women in the U.S. and single black eligible African-American men in the U.S., there is a disparaging difference. So for women who want to marry someone who looks like them and is culturally the same, the odds are getting smaller and smaller.
I do hear that. Do you think that the answer then is expand your dating pool, or do you find that women have to go inside and look at things that they might be doing in their dating strategy that's pushing men away?
I think it's both. Because, yes, I'm a firm believer that you have to work on yourself first. If you want to be a wife, you have to make sure that you're wife material. However, I also think that you have to look at how the black family is changing, because more and more African-American men are choosing to date, to fall in love, and to marry women of other nationalities. And it's nothing wrong with that. I'm a firm believer of love who you love. You can't tell your heart what to feel. But because the black family is changing, black women are remaining so incredibly loyal, waiting for the perfect black guy to come around and find them and sweep them off their feet. And, what are the odds now? It's like 40% of African-American women will never get married. So all I'm saying is that you need to possibly look outside of your immediate surroundings and your immediate community.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. And I think the other element of that you hinted at was that women are waiting for Prince Charming to come and sweep them off their feet.
Yes.
Too many people are sitting around waiting. And you have this book, Going the Distance for Love, 22 tips on handling your issues and finding love wherever it may be. So what are some of the issues that are coming up for the women that you work with?
One of the biggest things I tell women is burn your checklist. We have such unrealistic checklists when it comes to finding a mate. He's got to be, for Black women, he's got to be African American. He's got to be 6'3" or taller. He has to be slender. He has to be athletic. He has to have an 800 credit score, make 8 figures, not 7, 8 figures, no children, love his mother, all of those things, and be a Christian man, right? And that is so unrealistic. And I think that we create these expectations and we forget to look at ourselves and say, do we live up to those same expectations? Do we check all those boxes on our own checklist? And I think it's unfair.
I agree with you. And I like having some guidelines, but what I tend to do is take that 10-point list, and it's not just Black women, it's really all women. And really narrow it down to what are those top 3 must-haves and deal breakers, and they can't be anything superficial because love comes in different packages than you're expecting.
Absolutely. How he looks, whether he's handsome or not, should never be on a checklist.
Yes.
It should never be on a checklist.
You mentioned height. I really want to know what I had a client just yesterday who had I call it height math. You know, she said, I'm 5'4", and I can't date anyone that's under 5'10", because if he says on his profile he's 5'8", he's really 5'6", and that's only 2 inches taller than me. And my head starts to spin when we get into height math.
Yeah.
What do you tell a woman that says, I need a guy who has to be 6'3", and she's 5'2"?
I think it's silly. And it's just another sign that we are looking at the wrong things when it comes to love. You know, you fall in love with someone's character and you fall in love with their heart. You fall in lust with their physical appearance. And I'm not saying that you should not have a spark or you shouldn't be attracted to the person that you're in a relationship with, but that should not be the leading decision maker.
Exactly.
At all.
And you help these women to roam for love, to get out there and change their dating habits. And I was really surprised in the first episode. A lot of them came to you unlucky in love. And that first night out, a lot of them were like going up to men, putting the moves on, giving out their number. And I was actually surprised by how bold some of these gals were. That's something that a lot of my clients struggle with. Do you feel like women should take initiative in love? Let's say they are out at the bar like they were in the show. Is it right for a woman to take initiative, or do you still feel like there's a place for a man to lead and women have to know the boundary there?
To me, that just sounds too complex, right? I think that if you like somebody, go up and say hello. If you want to start a conversation with the guy, start a conversation. I'm not saying that you necessarily need to invite him back to your apartment 10 minutes after you meet him, right?
You know how that goes.
But I do think it's nothing wrong with women being open, being friendly, being engaging when they meet men. I don't think you have to sit back in a corner and wait for somebody to approach you. You mentioned the first episode, and we had 3 ladies that had a blast. Ashley, Shay, and Mercedes. And then you had Jita and Nikita, who weren't engaging.
And we're kind of judging a little
bit
the
not
others.
Kind of, a lot of it. And they were sitting in the corner, looking really uncomfortable. And not surprisingly, but men didn't approach them, right? But why did they approach the other 3 ladies?
You tell me.
I know it's because they were friendly. They were engaging. They were open. They were talking to men. They weren't that forward where they were soliciting anybody. But if someone said hello, they said hello back. And then they just started these great conversations.
I think there's also this feeling that if you aren't interested in a guy and you continue a conversation or you say hello back, that you're wasting your time or you're cutting yourself off from another potential date. But actually, if you're showing yourself to be friendly and open,
yes,
I think that makes you more approachable even for other men.
It does. And just because you are friendly and kind to someone and engaging, it doesn't mean you're looking to be in a relationship with him, right? But it does mean that you're maybe just a nice person. Guys like nice girls,
What are those qualities that men universally find attractive? I mean, obviously, the hourglass figures,
physical,
whatever.
Yes.
But that's really not everything. And a lot of times women come to me that are fuller figured, and then they think, who is going to love me?
Right.
But there's other qualities that men are really attracted
to
in a
lady.
For sure.
And I have to think about the perspective of being in Rome, right? So aside from the fact that there's just not a lot of African-American women in Rome, right? So the lady stood out. naturally. They were noticed very easily and they stood out. But again, it's about personality. Yes, they were beautiful, but they were also friendly. They were kind. They were engaging. They seemed interested. They were patient with the men. You know, just about everyone in Rome speaks English, but it's still a second language.
Yeah.
You know, so I think that they were all of those things. And at the same token, those women that I brought weren't used to getting that kind of attention. They were used to being overlooked or feeling invisible.
I wonder if there's a part of them too that opened up because they were in a new space. Because I think a lot of people are self-conscious when they go out in their own environment, and they know if they do something crazy, somebody's going to tell their mama and like their ex-husband or whatever.
Yeah.
And they're more guarded. But when you get into a new environment where you don't know anyone and you don't have anything to lose, it can open you up.
Yeah, I think it's that. And then just the sheer fact that, again, it's not a lot of African Americans in Rome. So they really stood out. So they were getting a lot of attention. They were naturally getting a lot of attention. Men were curious who they were and why were they in Rome and where were they from, and you know, they were so beautiful, and they were getting those kinds of questions. And I think it did create the opening for them to have great connections with men. But also think about this: when in your life are you able to leave your life behind, go to another country for 5 weeks, and you don't have to do anything but focus on dating? They didn't have to clean. They didn't have to cook. They didn't have to work jobs. They didn't have to take care of their families. All they could do was work on themselves. That's a beautiful gift. I think we all would want that.
So what will they take home with them from this experience? I know we're just at the beginning of this journey on To Rome for Love, but what are you hoping them to leave the process with?
That they would recognize that they are all beautiful, worthy of love, and deserving of love. And two, that they will have walked away from the experience and saw some things about themselves, got to know themselves better, and some things that they liked and some things maybe they didn't like so much. But the power in that is that once you recognize some things, then you have the ability to change them.
Yes. Thank you, Diane. I cannot wait to see what happens next on To Rome for Love.
It's going to be juicy.
But you guys at home have questions too. So Diane and I are ready to tackle your questions in Technically Dating.
Technically Dating.
And Technically Dating is now brought to you in partnership with BlackPeopleMeet.com, the premier dating site for Black singles. You can get started on your journey to find love with a free 7-day trial at blackpeoplemeet.com/datesandmates. Our questions today come from the Techspert app, which you can download for free in the App Store. Okay, you're a love expert, Diane.
Yes.
These are all questions that I'm sure you've handled, and this will really be helpful for our listeners. So I'll dive right in with the first question from a 21-year-old female. She says, I just met this guy, and we've been texting for 2 days. The conversation is flowing very smoothly. There's definitely a flirtatious vibe. Witty comebacks are there, then cute jokes, you know the drill. And then all of a sudden, he asks me to come to his house because he lives alone and he wants to cook for me. Is this a booty call?
Well, it sounds like one to me. I would say a first date, especially at 21, should not be at someone's home. It should be out. It should be in the open. It should be where lots of other people are.
Yeah, that's a very, very good piece of advice. And I think also it depends on, like, sometimes if he's 21, he might not have a lot of means to take her out.
Correct.
So let's give him the benefit of the doubt. Maybe it's not a booty call. I think there's a way for her to turn this around and just say, how about we do something out and maybe make a suggestion of something that doesn't cost a lot of money.
Exactly.
Like, oh, why don't we go down to the park and get some ice cream or something, something like that. And then you can see if he's like, no, you got to come back to my house. Then you know.
Yes.
That might be it.
And I think that all dates don't have to cost a lot of money.
Exactly.
You know?
What are some of your favorite dates?
Starbucks.
Starbucks?
Starbucks makes you feel at home when you're there, right? We go, we sit for hours, we chill. They've got comfy chairs.
You want to know a funny connection here? So I actually worked at Starbucks.
Oh. Did you?
In college. They're not sponsoring the show, but I do just love Starbucks. So I'll just talk about it anyway because I love them. And it's such a well-run company. And the owner created Starbucks based on the cafes in Italy, and he said, I want to create that environment here in the States where you go and it feels like the neighborhood place where people could gather. So that's what they were trying to do. And then they were like, but then they said when I worked there, they would never have a drive-through Starbucks because that doesn't create community and others drive-through Starbucks. But that just goes to show you, you know, we go back on.
Was that Ray that was against coffee dates? Someone we had on the show was like, never.
A lot of people are against coffee.
But you're pro coffee date.
I am pro coffee date, and I'm pro a short first date.
Yeah,
you don't need to know everything about him on date one. You just need to know: is he cute? Is he interesting? Do you want to see him again?
Yep.
And don't order shots or 5 drinks.
Or put a shot in your coffee.
That's
no
always
my favorite. When people do uppers and downers together.
It just becomes neutral.
It's interesting. You could tell on episode number 1 of who probably had a little too much to drink. That first aperitivo.
There you go.
Yeah,
it escalated quickly.
Oh, it does. It does. And then somebody was talking about limoncello.
Yeah.
Which is not,
I
not
like
for me.
limoncello. That's
okay,
good.
all right.
I love it.
Want to get on producer Thomas's good side?
There
you
you
can
go.
send some limoncello our way. Okay, this next question comes to us from a female that this is just dovetails right into what you talk about on To Rome for Love and in your book. How do you maintain a long distance relationship? So let's say some of these ladies, I know you can't tell me what's going to happen on the series, but let's say some of these ladies really make a connection there in Rome. How do they keep the romance alive?
So technology is your friend in dating now, right? But how often do we actually pick up the phone and talk to somebody? Yeah. We text, we send emails, we FaceTime, we do Instagram stories, we do Snapchat. All of those things make it really easy to stay connected to someone who might not be living in the same city that you're living in. And then, you know, for the ladies, if you think about it, flying is cheap and it's getting cheaper, right? With a little advance notice, you could get a ticket to Rome for $500.
I need to shop on the site.
That is cheaper than an outfit for a great date.
Well, I'm
night.
trying to go business class, girl.
There you go.
Well, I ain't saying I would do it. However, for love, you will do just about anything, right? Yeah. So you cannot allow distance, mileage, plane tickets, whatever, to stand in the way of love because I think it's so hard to find. Yeah. And so when you find it and it feels good and it feels right and you're like, this is the one, then go the distance.
I totally agree with you. And I have had clients that have met someone abroad, and the key is to get together in person as much as possible. And if you can find the flight deals that Diana's getting, then it makes it even easier. But like I had a client, I'm sure I've told this story before, but I had a client who met someone in South Africa, and she lived in Baltimore. And within a month, she flew to see him. They had met online, so they didn't have what your ladies have of actually meeting the people in person. And her family practically disowned her. They thought that she was crazy. Why are you going to this foreign country to stay with this person that you don't even know? And I said, you should go. You should go the distance for love, as you say in your book, because you don't know unless you get there and you spend time with them.
Exactly.
And then, you know, that whole process of the fiance visa is very fast. So once you say, okay, I want to have this person here and start to build a life with him, you have 90 days to figure out if you want to get married or not and actually, you know, get that ring.
Yeah.
That's really fast. So building that connection, I think, is really important. I love your advice on using technology.
Yeah, and I can't say who, but I will say that one of our ladies has made a few trips back to Rome.
Stop shooting. This is getting juicy.
Love wins.
Love always wins. This one comes to us from a female from Mississippi. It's a little different question. So here we go. She says, I'm a tomboy. I'm in a welding class, and I'm the only girl. I just love talking about trucks and other things like that. And I'm tired of being just a friend to some of the guys, but I don't want to change my personality. What do I do to get the guy without changing too much and getting him to realize that I'm more than a friend?
You want me to tackle that?
Yeah, of course.
All right. I've been asked this question before, too. I think, the writing is on the wall. If you want to be seen as a potential mate for a great guy, then stop showing up like a boy. It's really that simple. I'm all for, a tomboy or you like sports or whatever, but men are visual creatures, right? So if you start showing up as a feminine woman, they won't always see you as one of the guys.
But what if that's not her nature? Like, what if she wearing dresses makes her feel uncomfortable?
She doesn't have to wear a dress, but it's more than just attire, right? It's attire, it's mannerism, it's conversation. It's so many things that make women feminine. And, you know, you can keep doing what you've been doing, but based on results, it's not working so well for you.
Yeah. I watched that Danica Patrick documentary the other day, and I think that's a great example of a woman that's in a very masculine field.
Very
but
good
she's
example.
all woman.
She's
so
all
woman.
Yes.
Who did she just start dating? That was one of them.
I forgot.
I don't know.
It was like a baseball player? Or
We'll
something?
put it in the
Yeah.
Google
Football
machine.
player. He's like, anyway.
I think it was baseball.
Yeah.
I don't. Yeah,
Some
I don't,
sports
you don't
guy.
know. I don't know the sports, but
Yeah.
yeah, like game recognizes
There you
game,
go,
as
there
Ray
you go,
always
that's
says.
it.
So, Aaron Rodgers.
Aaron Rodgers.
Yeah. Thank God for Google.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think she can be who she is in the welding class, but I think there has to be a transition. One thing I work with women a lot on is, even if you're not a tomboy and you're not in a welding class, you might be coming to your dates with the energy of another part of your life. Like, I work with a lot of type A, high-powered women, as I'm sure you do too, at DianeValentine.com. And they sometimes bring that work energy, that masculinity that makes them successful there.
Yes.
And they come to the date and they're like, oh, I'm a boss lady and I'm going to be
Right.
a boss on this date. And I'm like, how about you put your hair up, put some earrings on,
Yes.
wear your high heels, and do the transformation, not just for the visual,
Right.
but so you feel like I've made a transition and I've left that work me behind, and now I'm date me, I'm feminine me, I'm woman me.
Yep. Absolutely. Absolutely. And for women that don't want to change and will say, like, okay, 100%, I am who I am, and you've got to accept me for who I am. You know, I just ask the question. So based on results, what you've been doing, how has that been working for you?
Not at all.
So if it hasn't been working for you, maybe you make some slight adjustments. Not change who you are, but maybe you start looking through the scenario of dating through different eyes.
Yeah. And I think that there's different facets to your personality. And I always believe in authenticity and bringing yourself to the date.
Yes.
But I say know your audience, right?
Yeah.
And look at, how do you want to make an impression on that person that's sitting across from you? And the impression you want to make on your welding teacher may be different than the impression you want to make on the guys.
For sure.
After. And you could even, I would say, like, just to give her some advice here, maybe she can ask one of the guys to get a beer with her after, and then say, oh, I'll meet you over there. And then she does a little transformation. And when she shows up at the bar, then she gets that, oh,
right, right.
He can like, it's not too late to change it around.
I agree.
You just show him that you're showing up in a different way.
And it can be as simple as, you know, a hair tie and a ponytail and some lip gloss.
Yes.
Right? It
Yep.
doesn't have to be this huge makeover, but you have to start positioning yourself as a attractive, feminine woman who doesn't want to be a guy's best friend.
Exactly. I like the element of surprise, too, in dating. That's how my husband got me, like with the Operation Date Nice Guys. I thought he was a nice guy, and then he went in for the kiss on the first date, and I was like, oh, wait a minute. Who are you? Hold on a second. I thought you were a nice guy. But just that little bit of surprise that she can still turn it around if she comes in with a different energy that he's not expecting, that might pique his interest.
I agree.
Since you said technology is our friend, Diane, I want your advice on this one. This comes to us from a female. She's 25, and she says, I've been texting with this guy, and he wants to go on a date with me. And then he asked me what I want in my future, and I'm not sure how to answer that. Keep in mind, he asks this over text. She's 25.
That is a tough question to answer via text, and I would just say keep it very general. You know, what do you want in your future? I want success and love and a family. Oh. Right? You don't have to go deep on a text message, right? But maybe that's a great conversation to have with somebody early in the dating process. I think that sometimes women are so head over heels in love that they don't want to have those kinds of questions. So I applaud the guy for even bringing that up. But just keep it
over
general.
over text. I think
it general.
Yeah, and that there's so much room for misinterpretation.
Yes.
Tangential question, and then I'll get back to this in a second. But speaking of a first date and topics on a first date and revealing things about yourself, I just did a little video for Match.com that's on their Twitter about first date topics, and politics was one of them. And it said, should you talk politics on a first date? I want to know what Diane Valentine thinks.
I say no.
Yeah.
I say no
Okay, we're in
politics
agreement.
at all. No politics.
Not everyone
at
agreed
all.
with me on this clip. You
It
guys-
is not
Check
date
it out.
material conversation, right?
Yeah.
Because if you agree, then it's great. You're like, oh my God, I knew we were gonna have a love connection. He can feel me. We speak the same language, right? But if he doesn't agree with you, now it can very quickly turn into a debate that might be too aggressive than you want, or an argument at worst.
Yeah, on a first date, you don't need all that drama.
No.
You need to have fun. But I do agree in like bringing it up early on, like you were saying,
Yeah.
because that if it is something that's important to you and that's part of your core values, but on a first date, that could be too much.
No.
Okay, so going back to texting this guy, what do you want in the future? What do you think of this response, Diane? I like to be sort of coy sometimes. So I might like play with him and say like, in my future, like tomorrow, well, to see you, of course.
Oh,
That's
good. I like
That's
that. That's
good.
fun.
That's
Right?
good.
Because sometimes they're asking the question, but a direct response is not always warranted. I think as women, we're
Yeah.
conditioned to answer what's being asked of us and like, be polite
Yeah.
and answer the question. And I just see women giving away too much information, especially over text. And you want to like get to the date, build the rapport,
Right.
and let that chemistry develop over time.
But he could also be thinking, right, with that kind of answer, he could also be thinking, oh my gosh, she doesn't know what she wants in life. Do I even want to go on a date with this girl? So the
Or he
thing
could be
about
thinking, is she
texting
cute?
is that you don't know, the context in which the text is being sent. You don't
That's
know
true.
what the person is thinking, which is why I hate texting, but that's a whole nother show. But you don't understand, you don't know the energy behind the words. And then
Yeah.
we read them with our own perception.
Yeah, I think that's just too deep to get on text. And I
So
just see
deep.
so many women falling into this trap
Mm-hmm.
of giving it all away before the date. And you want then you're like taking the air out of your first date too, because that could be a really interesting conversation topic for your
I
first
agree.
date. And if you already answered in text, there's nowhere for you to go. Do you want another text question, or you want something a little deeper, Diane?
Oh,
We have
let's go
choices
deep.
today. We have a
Let's
lot of
go
questions.
deep.
All right.
Trying to help
This
somebody.
one's deep. This one comes to us from a married lady.
Okay.
She is 27. She says, I've been married for about a year and a half now to a man that has me by 10 years in age. A man who's 10 years older than her. They married for a year and a half. Because of the age difference, I feel like I can't really talk to him and be myself. My problem lately is that I can't get my ex off my mind. The bond with him that I shared was just crazy. And I find myself wanting to reach out to him. And I know it's wrong. And I know I shouldn't, but I'm still tempted to. Ugh, she writes. What's a girl to do? Signed, Indecisive.
Wow. So you
She's
mean
a married lady.
aside from the fact that she never should have got married?
Oh,
We're not going to address that, right?
We'll skip past that.
We're
one.
going to skip
Yeah,
that.
yeah,
Okay,
yeah,
all right.
yeah,
I'm just checking.
Well, let me just,
checking.
I just want to get the way you think. She shouldn't have gotten married
No.
because she's still having feelings for her ex?
No, she should have not got married because she is too young. The best advice my father ever gave me is he said, Diane, you should not even start thinking about getting married until you are 35. And then by the time
35?
and then by the time you're 40, then maybe you'll be ready. And it was the best advice my father ever gave me, because who I was at 20 is not who I was at 25, is not who I was at 30. And it's not who I was at 35. So by the time I got 40, I was kind of really clear about who I am and what I wanted out of life, what I didn't want, what I was willing to accept, what my deal breakers were. And when you are in your 20s, I mean, let's just be honest. You don't know. You're still figuring out your life. You're still trying to find out who you are. So I feel bad for her that for whatever reason, she felt that she had to rush into this marriage thing. I think that when you get married to someone, you pledge your life to them for forever. And I think everybody goes into a marriage hoping and believing that it really is going to be forever. Well, forever is a long time.
It's a mighty long time, as Prince would say.
So why rush into this? What is the hurry?
Yeah, my concern here, and I will say, I got married when I was 28, and we're about to celebrate our 11th anniversary. But I agree with you.
Congratulations. I would have tried to talk you out of it.
I agree with you. It was just he was so clearly the one. And I agree
Everyone
with you
says that.
I'm not, well, not everyone says. I don't think she would say that, right?
She probably did a year and a half ago. A year and a half ago, I bet you she said that.
Maybe, but we took our time. Like it wasn't a fast, and I wasn't still thinking about my ex. It was just very clear. This is the next step in my relationship, and I want to commit myself to this person. I mean, the idea is forever, but it's like, well, but if it doesn't work out, it's okay. But it is working out 11 years later.
But
I'm not the same person. And what's terrible?
That's terrible to say. Well, if it doesn't work out, you know.
Well, I think, like you said, you don't know how. I mean, you might still be changing and evolving too, even though you waited longer to get married. Sometimes things change, but the point is, I'm still happily married. But I have grown and evolved with my partner, and we have good communication. And you can be growing in the same direction. But it sounds like at this stage that she's in, she wasn't 100% clear on this, and she's still having feelings of her ex, and the age difference means that these two are in a different stage of life, and that they don't want the same things, and that's really key and core to the value system you should build your marriage on, right? You have to want the same things.
You do.
And that's what really worries me. So I think you have to talk to him. Like she says, I can't really talk to him and be myself. If you can't be yourself with your husband, who can you be yourself with?
And she has to have that difficult conversation. I think, she didn't say she didn't love him. So obviously she loves him, and I presume that he loves her as well. And when you love somebody, you love them enough to tell them the truth.
That's true. A lot of times we don't want to hear the truth.
No, it's painful. It's painful, but
it's
the
important.
Truth shall set you free,
shouldn't it? It should. Yes. Okay. Do we have time for one more question, Producer Thomas?
If it's a quick one, no deep stuff.
Okay, real quick one. This one, I want to get a question from a male. This is a young guy. He's 18. He says, I was in class today and I noticed this girl that's pretty cute. I want to talk to her, but I don't know how to start the conversation, and I don't want to make it awkward. What should I do? Any good starters?
I would
for
say
a young guy?
Bring up something about the class. You're in a class together, so you already have a common subject matter. You can talk about anything, something you didn't quite understand, something you might have missed. You can ask her for a note, anything. It's perfect opportunity.
Yeah, I like that. Having a shared experience makes it a lot easier to begin a conversation. But you can also create a shared experience anywhere. Like if you're just on the street and you're like, oh, look at that funny dog walking down the street.
But I do
think
think
dog person?
It's tough for men. I think it's tough for men, because they're expected to be the aggressor, right? And they're supposed to be the hunter. So I do think sometimes men don't really know how to approach women. And, I appreciate his honesty.
Yeah, you gave him a good pickup line there. Well, if you have a question, you can post it on the Techspert app or on blackpeoplemeet.com, and your question may end up on a future show. Diane, it's been such a pleasure having you.
Yes.
You're not done, though, because I like to cap off the show every week with a segment I call Dating ... I think that the best advice is always what you think of first. Okay. So I'm going to give you some phrases.
The pressure.
It's not pressure, just first thing that comes to your mind.
All right.
And they're easy questions, so I know you're gonna ace this test. So just complete the sentence. Number 1, the best place to go on a first date is
Starbucks.
Starbucks. See, you already said it. I know when you said that, I was like, oh, that's the dating . Number 2, the sexiest thing about a woman is
her smile.
Number 3, the sexiest thing about a man is
his personality.
Number 4, the most important thing for a relationship to last is
honesty.
And number 5, this is a new one because we're kind of in the home stretch leading up to Valentine's Day. So the best way to celebrate Valentine's Day is
to roam for love and watch Going the Distance.
Going the Distance
for Love.
There you go. Yeah, if you're single, this book is just what you need. It's Going the Distance for Love. And you can get it on Amazon or at DianeValentine.com. And you can see Diane on the TV, on Bravo TV, every Sunday night at 9 p.m. in To Rome for Love. Thank you, Diane, for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
And thank you to my friends at blackpeoplemeet.com, the premier online dating site for black singles. Get your free 1-week trial at blackpeoplemeet.com/datesandmates. And thank you to my listeners for 200 amazing episodes. If you're not a subscriber to the show on iTunes, do that. And then you'll get the episodes the minute that they post. You get premium, exclusive access to Dates and Mates every week. And don't forget to leave a review and tell me which episode has been your favorite. I'm Damona Hoffman. We'll be back next week with more love advice for you. Until then, happy dating.